A common theme in articles and social media posts about domestic violence is calling for offenders to be held accountable. If you're someone who has been violent or abusive with your partner, what exactly does it mean for you to be held accountable? Hi, I'm Michael Clark with the Ananias Foundation, and in this video, we're going to talk about accountability, what it might mean, what it should mean, and why accountability should be a positive thing.
If you want to stop causing harm in your relationships, you're on the right path. This is Journey of Change, a video series to help you become the safe, loving partner you were meant to be.
What exactly does making domestic violence offenders accountable mean? To be sure, many who cry out for making domestic violence offenders accountable probably really mean that they want to see offenders punished. They want justice, or maybe what they really want is vengeance. True accountability, however, should not be punishment. Rather, accountability is a mindset, a way to think about ourselves. It's a code to live by, and an admirable one at that. By the way, this definition of accountability extends far beyond domestic violence. It applies to business, politics, sports, personal goals, relationships, leadership, citizenship, all kinds of areas, just to name a few. But since this channel focuses on those working to stop violent or abusive behavior, we'll focus our discussion there. To better understand accountability, it helps to look at its opposite, which is defensiveness. Now, we all get defensive sometimes. One problem with defensiveness, however, is that it limits our growth. We end up stuck with a life that's less than what's possible. Another downside is that our defensiveness harms our relationships. Our partners need to feel heard when they have a complaint. They want to know that they have some influence on our interactions with them. When we're defensive, it has the effect of shutting down their willingness to offer constructive criticism. Instead, they may shift to using a passive-aggressive approach, like saying snarky comments, or they may simply withdraw, killing the connection and the intimacy between us. Since we want to avoid being defensive, let's look at 4 different kinds of defensive tactics. The first is denial. Denial is when we don't tell the truth about our actions to others or maybe to ourselves. Statements like, "I never did that," or "I'm not violent," are denial if they're not true. The trouble with denial is that we're living in fantasy land. We never get better until we get real. The second defensiveness tactic is blame. Blame shifts the responsibility for what's gone wrong onto something or someone else. Saying, "I was drunk," or "if my partner didn't nag, I wouldn't have hit them." That's blame. Our goal with blaming is to get out of trouble, but it seldom works. As long as we focus on what others do, something we can't control, we give away our power to make our circumstances better. Plus, we end up sounding like whiners. When others see us blaming, we lose their respect. A third version of defensiveness is rationalization. In rationalizing, we attempt to justify our behavior by claiming it was necessary, even though it was not. Examples like, "Well, I pushed her because she was screaming at me," or "I hit him because he was not listening to me," are moves to rationalize our actions. This strategy attempts to help us feel better about ourselves, but once again, it doesn't work. Deep down, we know there are alternatives and that we must be able to respond differently, so we still feel guilty. Plus, everyone else sees our rationalization as a bunch of weak excuses, so we fool no one. Finally, the defense tactic of minimizing downplays what happened so that it doesn't seem that bad. Declaring, well, I didn't really hurt her, or I just slapped him, or I only did it once, leave the impression that it was no big deal. Our objective with minimizing is to escape consequences or to reassure ourselves that we're not that bad of a person. Here's the truth. We seldom see ourselves objectively, and it's easy to ignore the impact of our actions. Then we lull ourselves out of making the corrections that we need to make. Even if the offense was small, which is a subjective description, it remains an offense. It's better to address problems when they're small than to let them grow, which they almost always do. Psychologists tell us we get defensive because we are wired to protect ourselves. We have a built-in need to maintain a positive sense of ourselves. Therefore, we tend to resist messages that are counter to what we want and need to believe. Our view of ourselves is never quite accurate, however. If we overprotect it, we'll miss opportunities to improve. You might think you have a nice smile, for example, but you should also want your partner to alert you that you have broccoli stuck in your teeth. Defensiveness is not an unchangeable character flaw. It's an unconscious and automatic reaction to a perceived threat. Unfortunately, the threat is often not as big or real as we perceive, and therefore our reaction to it is more of an overreaction. People who were shamed or punished harshly as children are particularly prone to defensiveness due to how their brain's wiring developed in that environment. The good news is that our tendency towards defensive overreactions can be changed. The benefits are worth the investment in time and effort to do so. Sometimes reframing thoughts helps us become less defensive. For example, if we reinterpret criticism as good and helpful feedback, rather than a sign our partner hates us, we'll respond to their criticism much better, setting us on a path for a healthy relationship and building intimacy between us and our partner. Another way to reduce defensiveness is to separate who we are from what we've done. Each of us has faults and makes mistakes. It's part of being human, and each of us is worthy and a lovable person because we are created that way. The first does not negate the second. Remembering this helps us to not be so defensive because the criticism becomes less personal. It's about what we did rather than who we are. The advantage of accountability is the opposite of the problems created by defensiveness. We can enjoy more personal growth, better relationships, and gain the respect and admiration of others. Now, let's talk about this last one on the list, because it might be hard to believe. Doesn't accountability mean that everyone's going to blame us for everything? No, not at all. Think about accountability in a different setting, like athletics. Consider the difference between two coaches. Both just lost an important game. Now, one coach goes to the press conference and demonstrates accountability. He admits his game strategy didn't work. He sees now that he should have adjusted the personnel on the field sooner. He confesses that his team was not as prepared as they needed to be. The other coach goes to the post-game press conference and takes no accountability. There was not enough time to prepare for this game, given the team's packed schedule. The referees made bad calls. The players did not play with focus or motivation. Clearly, in neither case was the loss entirely the coach's fault. After all, they weren't the ones on the field. But which coach do we like and respect? Which do we believe will eventually create a winning team? It's the first one, of course. And the difference is because he demonstrates accountability. Since accountability is the more desirable trait, here are 3 things we can do to demonstrate it. First, accountability starts with listening objectively to whatever complaint or criticism comes our way. Is there some truth to what this person is saying? How is whatever happened affecting them? I know staying open-minded is difficult, so try listening to them like the situation doesn't involve you. That can help us not take the criticism so personally. Okay, second, taking responsibility means owning everything we did wrong, could have done better, or could have used our influence for a better outcome. When we get past our defensiveness, we can systematically go through the events and ask ourselves where our actions were less than ideal. Third, take action. If we just listen to a complaint and admit we were wrong, but then we don't do anything about it, we're not really being accountable. Accountability means not only apologizing and expressing care, but also attempting to restore the damage and working to make sure we act differently in the future. Now, I'll be the first to admit that none of these steps are easy. The good news is that when we commit to them and follow through, how others see us improves tremendously. People like, respect, and even admire accountable people. Deniers, blamers, excuse makers, not so much. Accountability has become such a rare trait. This is a fantastic way to set yourself apart from the crowd. Better still, how we feel about ourselves is also restored. Seeing ourselves as fallible people who work to fix our mistakes is a lot more inspiring and worthy of pride than someone who doesn't. The key is deciding which person you want to be, then following that path. Perhaps someday the call for holding domestic violence offenders accountable will no longer be a cry for punishment. Rather, it will be a statement encouraging those who have caused harm in a relationship to grow and change into better versions of themselves. This is what I wish for you. I'm Michael Clark with the Ananias Foundation, and I hope you found this discussion about accountability to be helpful. Take care, and I'll see you in another video.
Thanks for joining me today. I'm honored to be on this journey of change with you, and I hope I've helped you in some way. If you have any comments, questions, or suggestions, feel free to leave them in the comments section below. We'd love to hear from you. Also, be sure to hit the like button, share this with others who might find it helpful, and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss any of our future videos. For more resources, head to our website, ananiasfoundation.org. Until next time, take care and remember, change is possible.